I found this quantum physics book at Five Below. At first, I thought it was going to be your average physics book, and I was just gonna walk past it and not buy it. But I figured, it's a physics book being sold at Five Below. I have to get it and just see what it's about. So pardon me for not holding the book for the rest of the video. I do have to hold my script because, you know, there's a lot of information I have to cover here. I'll be putting excerpts from the book on the screen, as well as many other screenshots, as you will see as we get into this. The introduction has several typos. The last paragraph has 2 sentences back to back that start with finally. This is going to be an interesting book. I read through chapter 1 and I took a lot of notes. The first few sections are okay. It goes into the historical development of the chemistry field. It has cool figures and descriptions of what people thought of atoms and elements at the time. Although it still has a lot of grammatical errors, like being indecisive about whether to capitalize the word atom. I mean, I can get really into the weeds here and be super pedantic, but I feel like this video would be hours long, so I'll spare you guys. However, once we get into the section on the research of the atoms involving spectroscopy research, this is where it really goes downhill. This section is completely filled with unexplained jargon, despite the introduction specifically claiming that the book is for the novice trying to gain a snapshot of quantum physics. I'll just briefly go over my notes now on this section that I took actively while I was reading this chapter. Number 1, there is no definition of the term spectroscopy, which you'd think it would be interesting for an entire section that covers multiple pages on spectroscopy. Kirchhoff's law is not well explained. It gives a general one-sentence description, but it is kind of vague, and it does not explain any of its details or what they mean. While talking about stars, the book just briefly refers to them as planets for a sentence, like it just calls the stars planets. And finally, the caption on the last figure provides practically no explanation or breakdown as to what is going on at all. Like, this is all you get. I'm not even joking. Here's the whole page. Now you can tell me what's going on. I also wanted to mention that I did not end up reading the entire book for a few reasons. Number 1, I leafed through the rest and it looks pretty on par with the disaster of the spectroscopy section. And number 2, I just got really excited to tell you guys about this book and decided reading the whole thing would take up too much time and energy. However, I took a look at the equations and their breakdowns, and oh my god, it is horrendous. There are no comprehensible explanations for what any of the variables in the equations represent, unless you've literally done the math prior to reading this book. Page 2. Almost none of the graphs have any units, like at all. There's just no context for what's going on there, so screw us, I guess. So once I get to the end of chapter 1, there is a key points section that gives a summary of all the topics covered in the section. And it is much better written and organized than the entirety of the chapter itself. It was giving me AI generated vibes. Like you copy paste an essay into ChatGPT and say, give me the summary so I don't have to read the chapter, and it spits out this. The key points section is still not very helpful because even though it covers what the chapter is supposed to be talking about and explaining to you, the chapter itself is so poorly written that you can't meaningfully take away anything that it wanted you to take away from. So now that I painfully went through the first chapter of this book, I want to see the reviews. I want to know what people think of this book. So I used Google Lens to scan the book cover, and I went to the exact matches tab, which gave me a link to this Amazon listing published in 2024 with 1 review. Next, I wanted to Google the author, Sten Odenwald, because who the heck is this guy? And hang on, from Schrodinger's cat to antimatter, the tagline is wrong. So I click on it. Huh. Different cover. It looks like this was originally published in 2022, but why is the tagline wrong? I'm wondering if my copy is just a different edition of the book that was originally published in 2022. I look at the preview of this older Amazon listing, and the writing in that book is completely different. The introduction has more substance, the explanations make more sense even if they're still a little bit difficult to comprehend for the non-physicists. It's not just a bunch of jargon hit and runs. The first few chapters of this book cover the same topics. of my book. So then I look at the copyright information of my book. It claims to be from the same publishing company as the copyright information in the other book, which, by the way, I bought a Kindle version of the 2022 version of the book so that I could compare. So it claims to be from the same publishing company, but the edition year doesn't line up with the year on the Amazon page of the old book. Also, the ISBN doesn't exist. Like, nothing comes up, but the ISBN of the book that I found online of my version of the book does exist. So when you go to the Barnes & Noble website of my version and click on the author's name, you get a search for the author, but it only brings up the other version, the one that I don't have. My book is in the World of Cat library, but the titles don't line up. While I was doing my research on this, the author name in the Amazon listing of my version changed from Sten Odenwald to unknown author. And I know it previously said Sten Odenwald because I had clicked on his name on Amazon to see his other books. Now when I click on it, I just get an Amazon search for unknown author. Now, could I be crazy? Yes. This could be a real new edition of the book that was just rewritten and edited poorly, much more poorly than the original. But I think it's worth considering whether my copy is a fraudulent version, and I have another theory as well. I think my copy is a stolen version of the original book generated using AI. Why do I think this? Well, the key points section is one reason. The poor equation formatting is another reason. And I have one more note that's going to sound like a tangent, but stick with me because it'll make sense in a moment. I went down the list of chapters in each book, my copy and the original, and I wrote down the chapter titles to see if there was any correlation. It looks like the first few chapters of my copy do cover the same topics as the original version. It also uses some of the same images and figures, but that's where the similarities end. I mean, the two books still cover generally the same material because it's quantum physics, but it's not in order with each other. And here's where my next point comes in. I think that whoever made my copy of the book went to the Amazon listing of the original, used AI to scan the title, description, and the first few chapters of the book that are provided in the preview on the Amazon listing, and then generated a new book based on all of that, so that whoever is posing as Sten Odenwald can sell it to you and make a few bucks on the Barnes & Noble website, on the Amazon listing, and at my local Five Below. If you have a Five Below near you, I have a request. Please go and see whether this book is at your store. I really want to know if it's being sold elsewhere or if this is just a local thing for my Five Below store where they just bought a bunch of copies of this book specifically. And my version of this book is harder to find than the original version, by the way, so I don't know how Five Below pulled that one off, buying a bunch of copies of that version instead of the original. Maybe it was just because it was cheaper. It's probably because it was cheaper. That leads me to the conclusion of this video. Do you think this is fraud? Do you think my copy of the book is AI written based on what I've said and shown you? Please let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I could be completely wrong on this. It could be a new version of this book that was just rewritten and reorganized and formatted poorly, and a lot of the substance was left out. It could be that. It could be that, but for the sake of my entertainment, I'm going to believe in this conspiracy theory. Thank you for watching. Adieu. I don't know how to end a video properly.